I think being aggressive in a positive way is very good, and it protects me as well. I mean, it puts everyone on their guard.
Grace Jones didn't fit the mold, so she broke it piece by piece. With razor-sharp features, a body built like sculpture, and a presence that stopped time, she didn't ask for space. She took it. In an industry obsessed with sameness, she became the difference. The industry didn't know what to do with her, so she forced it to change. She turned herself into a walking revolution, mixing danger with style, power with elegance. This isn't just the story of a model, it's the story of a rebel. Join us as we uncover how one woman rewired the entire system from the inside out. Rising above challenges. Grace Jones was born in Spanish Town, Jamaica in 1948. From the start, her life was full of sharp contrasts. She grew up in a very strict household with many rules. Her family followed Pentecostal beliefs, and the children had to behave like perfect examples for everyone around them. Her mother, Marjorie, was a skilled seamstress, while her father, Robert, worked as a minister. When her parents left for the United States, Grace stayed behind in Jamaica with her siblings. Raised by her grandmother and step-grandfather, that man used to treat her harshly, often punishing her in ways that stayed in her memory for years. As she got older, she began to understand how that pain shaped her. It built a tough layer around her, something she carried into everything she did later in life. When she turned 13, she and her siblings moved to Syracuse, New York, to live with their parents again. Her parents had started a church there, and the rules followed them into this new life. But something inside Grace had started to shift. She pushed against those rules, wore makeup, and slowly stepped away from the image her family wanted her to keep. During her time in Syracuse, she studied theater at a local community college. But that wasn't enough for her. She craved more, something wild and free. So she moved to Philadelphia to do summer theater. That decision opened up an entirely new world. She began trying hard substances, joined in with go-go dancing, and even hung around with the Hells Angels. She explored different lifestyles, lived in communes, and broke away from everything she had known. At 18, her life changed again after she signed a modeling contract with Wilhelmina Models. By 1970, she packed up her life and moved to Paris. That was the move that opened doors she had never expected. In Paris, she started modeling for big names like Yves Saint Laurent and posed for well-known photographers like Helmut Newton. She showed up in fashion magazines such as Elle and even landed on the cover of Vogue. Still, she didn't get every job. Both white and black editors sometimes turned her away. Some agents told her they couldn't promote her look because of her skin color, but Grace didn't back down. Those words didn't break her. They pushed her forward. Paris gave her something she never found in New York. It gave her a space to belong. She found a creative underground scene where people were changing and challenging the old ways. She moved into an apartment with two other models who were also just starting out, Jerry Hall and Jessica Lange. The three of them didn't know what was coming. They were just young women trying to survive, taking on whatever jobs they could find, eating what they could afford, and sharing everything. Things didn't change overnight, but they started to pick up. Grace began getting booked by big designers. Yves Saint Laurent gave her a spot. Then Kenzo followed. After that, the magazines that once said no began to call. Vogue. Paris wanted her. By the mid-1970s, she was working nonstop. But Grace didn't just model, she built a new image. She showed up at shoots with ideas. She wore what she wanted. If she didn't like the clothes, she brought her own. She even refused makeup artists if she didn't trust their style. She shaped her poses into sharp angles. She used her body like a sculpture. Her look was powerful, edgy, and different. She didn't smile on command or move like anyone else. Some photographers were shaken by her presence. They didn't give her orders. They followed her lead. They tried to keep up, and that gave her even more control over her work. She didn't want to please people. She wanted to leave a mark. In 1977, she took that same energy and brought it to the stage. She appeared at Studio 54 in New York, not just as a model or celebrity, but as a performer. Studio 54 was the wildest, most famous nightclub in the world at the time. It was the place where stars like Andy Warhol, Mick Jagger, and David Bowie came to party. Right in the middle of all that glamour stood Grace Jones, commanding attention like no one else. She wasn't just there for fun, she was part of the show. Over the years, Grace influenced many performers. Her style, her sound, and her boldness touched artists across generations. She didn't try to fit in. She stood out every single time. Everything she did came from a place of strength and self-belief. She faced rejection, racism, and judgment, but she turned every struggle into fuel. She broke rules without asking. She took charge of her image, her career, and her future. But even with all that, Grace still wanted to go bigger. Becoming a rebel. Grace Jones's strict religious upbringing in Jamaica deprived her from listening to secular music, but she still found ways to soak it in. In the 1980s, she moved into music, blending different styles. She took pieces from rock, reggae, and new wave and turned them into something all her own. She stood out with her bold performances, deep voice, and strong look. Her stage shows were full of drama and power, shaped by the discipline and fear she had grown up with. But now she used those old lessons for her own purpose. In 1977, she signed a record deal with Island Records. That moment changed everything. She wasn't just stepping into the music world, she was breaking down the door. She released a set of disco albums one after another: Portfolio, Fame, and Muse. These albums helped her grab attention quickly, especially in the dance world. Her track I Need a Man climbed up the charts and landed at #1 on the dance list. Then came her take on Edith Piaf's La Vie en Rose. It was nothing like the original. She gave it new life with a disco heartbeat and her powerful voice. No one expected a Jamaican model to bring a French song into a new world like that, but Grace didn't follow rules. She created her own. Her live shows stood out also. They weren't just concerts, they became wild, strange, unforgettable events. She didn't just walk on stage, she came out of cages. She dropped from ceilings. She wore outfits shaped like sculptures. Some of them looked like armor with hard edges and sharp designs that made her look like a warrior. Her voice wasn't soft or sweet. It was deep, strong, and full of force. She didn't try to sound pretty. She wanted power, and that's what she delivered. By 1980, Grace changed her sound again. She began working with reggae legends Sly and Robbie. Together, they made Warm Leatherette and then Nightclubbing. These albums didn't fit into any one genre. They blended new wave, reggae, rock, and funk. She covered songs by artists like Tom Petty, Iggy Pop, David Bowie, Joy Division, and The Police, turning each one into something entirely her own. Her hit Pull Up to the Bumper made waves, reaching #2 on the dance charts in 1981. Her songs had edge, rhythm, and boldness. It grabbed attention in every nightclub. While her music kept growing, her image was also shifting. She teamed up with Jean-Paul Goude, an artist who became both her creative partner and her lover. Together, they created unforgettable visuals. Goude pushed her style into new zones: short, razor-sharp haircuts, bold makeup, angular outfits with huge padded shoulders. She looked and moved like a futuristic being. Her album covers became famous not just for the music, but for the images that came with them. One of the most iconic was the cover of Island Life, a greatest hits collection released in 1985. In that image, Grace stood on one leg in a dance pose, with stretched out limbs that looked impossible. Goude had built the photo by combining different shots into one. That single image would later inspire many other artists to try and copy its look. In 1985, she also released Slave to the Rhythm, an autobiographical album that dug into her journey. The songs told parts of her story through music. Then came Inside Story in the following year, produced by Nile Rodgers. The standout track, I'm Not Perfect, But I'm Perfect for You, had that classic sound, sharp, catchy, and full of confidence. She kept moving forward with Bulletproof Heart. This album included the strong dance hit, Love on Top of Love, Killer Kiss, which burned through the clubs. Around that same time, she shifted toward acting. Music had taken her to new heights, but she wanted to try something else. She stepped into the film world, using her bold presence to take on big roles. Still, music always pulled her back. In 2008, she returned with Hurricane. That album brought her back to her Jamaican roots. Songs like William's Blood and I'm Crying, Mother's Tears reached deep into her personal life. The lyrics showed her struggles and her strength. She didn't just sing the songs, she lived them. Even after decades in the industry, she didn't fade. In 2022, a whole new generation discovered her when she appeared on Beyoncé's Renaissance album. Her voice came through strong, just like it always had. The track Move gave her a new spotlight. Younger fans now saw what others had known for years. Grace Jones was unlike anyone else. She had taken the stage in the wildest ways, worked with the boldest artists, and shaped an image that refused to stay in one lane. Her career was never built on trends. It was built on fire, bold choices, and unstoppable energy. Every move she made changed how people saw music, fashion, and performance. She had gone from hiding music in her childhood bedroom to turning her body into a moving piece of art. And even after all the years, Grace kept showing up, kept surprising the world, and kept pushing the line between music and something far bigger. Reborn, a new phase. At that time, illegal substances weren't hidden in the world. They moved from hand to hand like party favors, almost like champagne at a celebration. That was how things worked then. Everyone wanted to stay up all night. Everyone wanted to feel alive. The music never stopped, and the lights never dimmed. Grace joined in just like everyone else. Back then, she didn't think too much about it. No one really thought about the damage it could bring later. It was just how people survived those long nights that never seemed to end. At that moment, she felt like nothing could hurt her. She moved through the world like a storm, full of energy and power. She didn't follow anyone's rules. She made her own. People looked at her and didn't dare question her place in the spotlight. She looked ready to cut through anything that stood in her way. Then one night, she sat on a talk show next to the host. Her outfit was bold, shaped in a way that made her look almost like an artwork. Her presence was strong, impossible to miss. But while she was still sitting there, the host turned his back on her and started speaking to someone else. That moment triggered Grace, and she didn't hold back. She raised her hand and struck him hard. Then she did it again and again. On live television, in front of a studio audience and millions of viewers at home, she kept hitting him.
Well, don't turn your back on me anymore.
I can't look at you. No, hold on, just a minute.
The crowd reacted instantly, unable to believe what they were seeing. The host tried to act like nothing had happened, tried to laugh it off, but the truth was written all over his face. She had done something that people didn't expect. She made it clear she wouldn't accept being pushed aside. That clip got played over and over. People started repeating the moment and turning it into a phrase. But if someone watched that scene carefully, they could see the real message behind it. A woman, strong and proud, had been ignored by a man who thought she didn't matter at that moment. She showed him she did. The media attacked her right after. They called her names. They tried to label her as a problem, but they all missed the real point. Grace had made a stand. She had shown the world that she would not shrink just to make others feel comfortable. She refused to stay in the background. She later laughed about it, calling it a strange night filled with hallucinations and bad substances. But the truth was much deeper. That reaction came from years of people treating her as less, from agents who told her she wasn't the right look, from photographers who tried to control her image, from everyone who tried to limit her. By the late 1980s, Grace was everywhere. She had broken into films, showing up in action movies with force and confidence. She played warriors and assassins. She acted beside the biggest stars and often took over the screen with her presence. At the same time, she stayed active in the fashion world and continued making music. She had found success in every area. No one had done it like her before. But behind the stage lights, her private world had started to fall apart. As the years passed, the substances started taking something from her. So by 1986, she took a trip to Jamaica, hoping to take a break. Instead, she found herself arrested for possession of illegal substances. She spent 2 nights locked up. She tried to explain that she wasn't using it. Tests were done and they found nothing. The charges were dropped, but the experience shook her. That fear stayed with her. She made the choice to check into rehab and stop completely. But the problems didn't stop. She found out that the person managing her money had been lying to her. That man had taken more than half of everything she had earned. He hadn't paid her taxes. He had drained her accounts while pretending to work for her. She had trusted him. She had believed in him. And he had left her with almost nothing. Everything she had worked for disappeared. It wasn't just the money. It was the time, the energy, the years of performing, working, creating, all taken. And then something worse arrived. AIDS began spreading across the world. In her circles, it spread fast. The people she loved started to get sick, and then they started dying. The makeup artists, the photographers, the dancers, the friends she had made in Paris and New York, one after another, they were gone. She watched them leave. She went to funeral after funeral. The pain started to grow inside her. The fun, wild nights at Studio 54 now brought back memories of loss. She stayed in that dark place for a long time. For years, she felt like she couldn't escape it. The laughter, the colors, the magic of those years were now filled with shadows. She didn't feel strong anymore. She didn't feel like herself. She wanted to pull back, to hide from everything that reminded her of what she had lost. But in 1991, something inside her changed. She sat down during an interview and said something with certainty. She said she was back. She said she had left the sadness behind. The years had taken so much from her. Friends, money, her own sense of control. But she chose to fight again. She started focusing on what mattered. She stepped back into the world that had once lifted her up, and she started moving forward again. She didn't let pain stop her. She didn't let loss keep her down. Grace Jones came back because she refused to be broken. She stood up once more and began rebuilding. And as she moved ahead, she showed once again that nothing and no one could keep her away from the light for long. She started making music again, putting her voice into new songs that carried the weight of everything she'd lived through. She picked up film scripts again, choosing roles that reflected her strength. She began touring again, stepping onto stages with confidence, wearing costumes that made people stop and stare. Her performances became experiences filled with color, movement, and that same energy she'd always carried. People hadn't forgotten who she was, and she hadn't lost anything that made her unforgettable. She didn't try to erase her past, she owned it. She used every part of it to move ahead. The highs, the lows, the mistakes, the triumphs, all of it became part of her strength. And as she continued on, she never let anyone shape her into something she wasn't. She had already broken out of every box. She had already pushed through every wall. Grace Jones didn't just return. She rose again, fiercer than before, and this time, nothing could drag her back down. An unusual reinvention. Grace Jones had a son named Paolo with Jean-Paul Goude. He was born in 1979, and as he grew up, he began to see a change in his mother. Grace, who was once full of life and energy, had started to break down. The excitement and fun that used to fill their home began to fade. Her son noticed this, and his innocent words stayed with her more than anything else. Those words from her child reached a place deep inside her. They made her stop and think about what had happened to her spirit. That moment pushed her to rebuild herself from the inside out. She didn't rush. She didn't do it for fame or for others. She pulled herself together slowly, step by step. Grace began to live between Paris and New York. She stayed away from crowds and cameras. She needed space. That spotlight that once gave her so much now felt like it could destroy her. So she turned her back on it. She picked up new habits that helped her heal. She joined acting classes. She did music, but only when she wanted to, not because anyone told her to. She took time to practice yoga and care for her body. She focused on her son and made sure he had a strong, steady presence in his life. And then she surprised everyone. She decided to marry. In 1996, she got married in secret. The man was Attila Altunbey, a Turkish bodyguard who had worked closely with her. The wedding was so private that even her close friends didn't know it had happened. But the marriage did not bring peace. Things started to turn bad. Attila became controlling, and Grace knew she couldn't stay in that situation. She walked away for her safety. They never went through with an official divorce. To this day, on paper, they're still married. It's one of those strange pieces in her life story that doesn't follow the rules. But then again, Grace Jones never followed rules. The 1990s passed without chaos. She didn't chase fame. She didn't cause scandals. She just lived. But Grace couldn't completely stay away from headlines. In 1998, something happened that reminded the world who she really was. She was invited to perform at a private event at Disney World. She took the stage and got lost in the music. As she danced and sang, she removed her top in the middle of the show. The people in charge at Disney didn't know how to handle that. Families were in the crowd, children were around. Sadly, the company had no choice than to ban her from all Disney properties for life. Grace didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply moved on. If Disney couldn't handle her, that was their problem, not hers. While she stayed out of the spotlight, something interesting started to happen. The world slowly began to understand her. Without trying, she had become the blueprint. What once seemed too strange or too wild was now being studied and copied. Then in 2008, something major happened. Grace released a new album called Hurricane. It had been 19 years since her last studio album. By now, she was 60 years old. In an industry that often ignores women after 30, she came back stronger than ever. The music didn't sound old. It didn't sound like she was chasing her past. It sounded fresh, bold, and deeply personal. It mixed her life story with reggae, electronic sounds, and her powerful attitude. Critics didn't expect it. This wasn't just another comeback. This was proof that Grace Jones still had something new to give. One track, Corporate Cannibal, stood out. The video showed her face twisting and melting, using digital effects that seemed ahead of their time. She didn't just return to music, she brought the future with her. And then, in 2012, she gave the world another moment to remember. Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee concert was a massive event. The stage stood right in front of Buckingham Palace. Grace, now 64, came out and performed Slave to the Rhythm. But she didn't just sing. She hula hooped through the entire performance. For 4 minutes straight, she kept the hoop spinning while singing live. She didn't stop. She didn't drop the hoop. She didn't miss a beat. The crowd couldn't believe it. While others delivered safe, regular shows, Grace did something nobody else dared to do. It wasn't just about entertainment. It showed strength, breath control, confidence, and boldness. She took over the stage in a way that couldn't be matched. That performance proved what her whole career had been about. She didn't let age hold her back. She didn't follow anyone's rules. She didn't care about the limits people tried to place on her. Grace Jones always found a way to break through, to push forward, and to show the world that she was still far ahead. She didn't just survive. She rose above everything, and every time people thought she had done enough, she found a new way to surprise them all. A force of influence.
And it puts everyone on their guard to be nice to me.
Well, can I ask you, how do you view yourself?
In 2015, Grace Jones released her memoir. She called it, "I'll Never Write My Memoirs," even though that's exactly what she had done. That title showed the way she often played with rules. She always liked doing the opposite of what people expected. The book was bold, and in it, she spoke about the new generation of artists. She pointed at people like Lady Gaga, Madonna, Miley Cyrus, and Rihanna. She believed they had all followed her style, but she didn't think they truly understood it. They copied her image, her edge, her fire, but they didn't go through what she did to get there. They hadn't paid the same price. She explained how these new stars wore strange clothes, danced in wild ways, and acted like rebels. But to her, it was no longer rebellion. It had become part of the system. They weren't pushing back against anything. They were fitting in, not standing out. And for someone like Grace Jones, that was the problem. Her whole life had been about refusing to blend in. She didn't want to follow the rules or please the crowd. She wanted to challenge them, scare them, shake them up. Then, in 2018, something very meaningful happened. Jamaica gave her one of its top honors, the Order of Jamaica. It was a big moment. She had grown up in Spanish Town, where people often said she was too dark, too strange, too loud. Now, the same country was holding her up as one of its brightest stars. At the ceremony, she smiled and spoke with love about her home country. Her words were warm and her voice was full of pride. But deep in her eyes, there was something stronger. She had always believed this day would come. Now in her 70s, Grace Jones still steps on stage when she feels like it. She decides when and where to perform. She has never allowed anyone else to control her path. She still moves between Paris and Jamaica, carrying pieces of both worlds inside her. She's still legally married to a bodyguard she left behind in the 1990s. They separated, but she didn't bother with the paperwork. That small fact tells a lot about her way of doing things, and by her own rules always. She's now a grandmother. Her son, Paolo, has a daughter. And when Grace speaks about her, something changes. That hard edge softens. The fire remains, but a gentle side shows through. She becomes almost tender. Still, that softness does not mean she's lost her power. It never disappeared. She is still the same woman who once slapped a talk show host on air. Still the same person who turned down Disney without blinking. She had been told for years that her skin was too dark, that her style was too strange, that she wouldn't sell. But instead of shrinking back, she grew stronger. She became a force. She made herself priceless. People in the music world and fashion industry now speak her name with respect. Artists mention her as inspiration. Magazines write about her as a symbol. Filmmakers try to capture her story. But no matter what they say or how they try to explain her, they all come back to one truth. Grace Jones didn't just break down barriers. She made it look effortless. She took every rejection and insult and turned them into fuel. She built herself out of pain and pride. From her childhood in strict churches in Jamaica to the catwalks of Paris, from dancing under wild lights at Studio 54 to standing strong in royal spaces, she walked paths no one else could. No one else had her kind of strength, her sharp talent, or her way of pushing back without fear. The same people who once rejected her now try to copy her. The same industry that said she wouldn't work now watches her closely. Agencies that once ignored her now search for models who remind them of her. She never fit into the box they wanted to place her in, so she made her own space. She built a world where she could be free, and then she let others come in, but only on her terms. That may be her biggest impact, not just the songs or the modeling or the films, but the freedom she gave others, the freedom to be different, the freedom to take up space, the freedom to speak up, the freedom to push back when the world tries to push you down. Grace Jones didn't only survive the system that once tried to shut her out. She changed it from the inside. She reshaped the world that rejected her. And when the dust settled, she was still standing. She's still standing now, and the world wouldn't want her any other way. What are your thoughts on Grace Jones's influence on the entertainment and fashion industries? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.